Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever the case may be. Welcome to This Week in Random. Today from Deadline.com, Game of Thrones House Targaryen Prequel from George R. R. Martin and Ryan Condal nears HBO pilot order. What's upsetting to me? I guess it doesn't upset. It does upset me. I'm sorry. You guys may or may not know that I am the artist responsible for giving Sir Duncan the Tall a face, as George tells me. I'm responsible for The Hedge Knight, The Sworn Sword, and The Mystery Knight, the three Game of Thrones prequel novellas, already completely penned by George R. R. Martin, and which have been dismissed as possibilities by George for production in the HBO prequel series that they're doing, or HBO Westeros universe projects that they're doing. George didn't want HBO to mess up Dunk and Egg, because Dunk and Egg are so close to his heart that, and mine, that he didn't want them messing it up the way they messed up Game of Thrones, and he hasn't finished all of the Dunk and Egg stories, so he didn't want to give them free reign to take Dunk and Egg wherever it could go. So, unfortunately, those books, Sir Duncan the Tall, Forbear to Brienne of Tarth, You Will Have to Wait Your Turn, Aegon Targaryen, brother to Maester Aemon, and et al. I'm sorry, but you will have to wait until, God willing, someday George finishes your novellas. Then, at that point, he will probably, if he is still able to give the rights, or to get those made, as I really wanted to see Dunk and Egg. Anyways, my personal problems aside, let's go on with the story. Exclusive. Hold your dragons, Game of Thrones fans. Another prequel for the hugely popular fantasy series is eyeing a green light. I've learned that HBO is close to giving a pilot order for a Game of Thrones prequel from author and Game of Thrones co-executive producer George R. R. Martin and Colony co-creator exec producer Ryan Condal. Condal? I don't know. Which is set 300 years before the events in Game of Thrones and tracks the beginning of the end for House Targaryen. The network declined comment. Created by Martin and Condal and written by Condal, I hear the project is based on the Fire and Blood book, thank you, by Martin, and has been in the works at HBO since last fall. According to sources, the Condal-Martin project is not a sixth Game of Thrones prequel. I hear it represents a brand new take on a world originally tackled by Brian Cogman in one of the 5 Game of Thrones prequel scripts commissioned by HBO in 2017. Former Game of Thrones co-executive producer Cogman confirmed in April that his prequel idea is not going forward. I guess they're not all gems. In typical Martin fashion, the author had been dropping clues about the House Targaryen prequel project all along. We have 5 different Game of Thrones successor shows in development at HBO, and 3 of them are still moving forward nicely, he wrote on his blog in May. Yeah, you want to get a lot of good information about what's going on. George does have his blog called Not a Blog. If you're interested, you can check that out at georgerrmartin.com. One of the 3 is the untitled prequel written by Jane Goldman and starring Naomi Watts, which shot a pilot this summer. The project, now in post-production and awaiting word whether it will get a pickup, chronicles the world's descent from the golden age of heroes into its darkest hour. 2 other shows remain in the script stage but are edging closer, Martin wrote in May. What are they about? I cannot say, but maybe some of you should pick up a copy of Fire and Blood and come up with your own theories. Now, Fire and Blood is it's not a Game of Thrones, a Song of Ice and Fire. A Song of Ice and Fire. It's based on the history of Westeros, well, yeah, 300 years before Game of Thrones, dragons ruled Westeros, George R.R. Martin. And I believe it's written from the perspective of a Maester at the Citadel. I have not read it. I've read part of it. I haven't gotten to read the whole thing. I haven't had a lot of time to read lately. Still waiting on Winds of Winter. George, I know it's done. I believe in my heart it's done. Just please publish the darn thing. But I think that, I have hopes. I know a lot of people don't have hopes because of the miserable, miserable final season of Game of Thrones. But I have hope that George will be going into this series maybe a little heavier handed, maybe with his eyes wide open as to not allowing the producer, the writer, the director, whatever, to step on the butterflies that they did in the series, the TV series, the HBO series, Game of Thrones, and possibly craft a story more in the heart of what George does. George R.R. Martin is my favorite author. He is beyond awesome as a writer. He crafts amazing tales with amazing characters. I can't imagine he would just close his eyes and say, all right, go ahead and screw more stuff up. So I have faith that this will be well done. HBO does do great stuff. Yeah, they really royally screwed up the end of Song of Ice and Fire, and I'll never forgive them for it. But I think this is a different team. George hopefully is more involved, even though I want him to be less involved so he can finish writing the darn book series. But everyone understands that. George, please, I love you, man. Take a walk once in a while. You got to get that heart in shape to last you long enough to get these books done. And I just wish the best for you and Paris. So, coincidentally or not, a large image in the Fire and Blood cover was featured just above this section in the same blog post with a note about the book's success having just re-entered New York Times top test bestseller list where it had previously spent more than 3 months. You can't keep a good dragon down, Martin wrote about the feat. See, it sounds like he's excited about it. So, I'm going to be excited about it. I'm excited for George and for this world, which I just love. I love Westeros. I look forward to it. I'm going to read Fire and Blood. I'm going to just sit down and get through that. Or I'm going to get the audio, and I can work while I listen to it. Anyways, named after House Targaryen's words, Fire and Blood. First volume was published last November with the tagline 300 years before Game of Thrones, dragons ruled Westeros. The Targaryen history book, a companion to Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire saga, goes back to a time when House Targaryen, the only family of dragon lords to survive the doom of Valyria, took up residence on Dragonstone and then took over Westeros. Fire and Blood starts off with Aegon the Conqueror, creator of the Iron Throne, and goes on to recount the generations of Targaryens who fought to hold the throne all the way up to the Civil War known as the Dance of the Dragons that nearly tore their dynasty apart. The war will be a significant part of the TV adaptation, I hear. Oh, you know what would be sick? Oh, no, they're not going to do the Aegon the Conqueror. Gosh, they should do Aegon the Conqueror. That would be so rad. Wrap it up at the end with the Field of Fire and then the forging of the Iron Throne, except for don't do the Iron Throne that was in the movie or the TV show. Do it the way it looks in George's mind. Just this giant mangled mess of blades standing 30 feet tall. That would be awesome. Game of Thrones, which is based on Song of Ice and Fire, featured a couple surviving Targaryens, including Dany and Viserys and Jon Snow. At TCA in July, HBO program. Right, Beyond Critical. I don't care about all that stuff. Beyond the critical acclaim, Game of Thrones was a rare cultural juggernaut with more than 45 million people tuning in for its final episodes and 40 million of them being routinely disappointed. A month earlier, Bob Greenblatt, chairman of Warner Media's original series. It's a double-edged sword, he told Deadline. We're having conversations about how do we smartly continue the Game of Thrones universe, but we have to be really thoughtful about not killing the golden goose and not putting on shows that aren't up to the quality level, and how many is too many. If they are first 3-season Game of Thrones quality, then there's no such thing as too many. Especially if you're only doing 10 episodes a season. Do 10 episodes of this one, and then do 10 episodes. We can have Game of Thrones. We don't like waiting all year round to have 10 weeks of Game of Thrones. You can do a fall season, and you can do a spring season. And we can have 2 seasons, 2 different shows going on at the same time. It's not too much. We love good Game of Thrones. We will back good Game of Thrones. Just don't screw us in the end. Please. I think Game of Thrones is a fantastic property, but I don't want to just be the home of prequels and sequels and all that stuff, he said. I think you want to be really careful about how you do it. Well, that's the thing. This isn't really a prequel. A prequel would lead up to an event, right? That's what a prequel is. This is set in the same world, but set 300 years earlier, telling its own specific storyline. The only characters who would be alive would be the children of the forest, right? And you're probably not even going to deal with that. I don't know, you might. Probably not, though. So, yeah, it's not a prequel. It's not a sequel. It is just set in the same world. So, don't think of it that way, please. But do be very careful about how you do it. Condal was the co-creator, executive producer, and showrunner of sci-fi drama Colony, which aired on USA for 3 seasons. On the film side, he has been adapting Logan's Run. For Warner Brothers. I gotta look into that. I loved the original Logan's Run movie from the 70s. In addition to executive producing all Game of Thrones prequels, Martin executive produced the Wildcard universe Hulu is developing based on his books. I have also drawn a couple of the covers for the Wildcards novels and some other Wildcards related artwork. So fun. He also recently executive produced the sci-fi series Night Flyers. Did that come out? I saw something about it last year, but I don't think I ever saw it come out. Condal and Martin have a long-standing relationship. In 2016, Martin's theater in Santa Fe, Jean Cocteau Cinema, hosted a screening of Colony, following by a conversation between Martin and Condal. Condal is repped by Grandview, blah, 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 blah. So, again, I have high hopes. I am not a doom and gloomer. I know, as most of you were disappointed in the ending, the last episodes of Game of Thrones. I mean, I can't even go into it. But that does not necessitate that they are going to screw the pooch on this one. And hopefully George will put something in the contract whereby you can't screw this up. So I hope that's the case. I pray that's the case. And I guess we will see in however many years it takes them to put this all together. But hey, long live A Song of Ice and Fire, the real Game of Thrones. And George, please get the books done soon. This has been This Week in Random. I appreciate you all being here. Please like, subscribe, share for this kind of content and others. I do all kinds of shows on my channel, so please skip around, check them out, and if you like it, do subscribe. I will see you guys next time.